with the appearance of scientific rigor is a sign of Dante's plan to give in Paradiso 10 a representation of the totality of knowledge, which he envisions as the harmonious correlation of traditionally contradictory views. Toward the end of the canto, the speaker, Thomas Aquinas, names the 12 wise spirits circling in a wheel. The polymaths range from Aquinas to Isidore of Seville, from Boethius to Peter Lombard, from Solomon to Bede, to Richard of St. Victor, to Dionysius the Areopagite, Gratian, Orosius, to Albertus Magnus, and Sige of Brabant. To this enumeration of names, there is a counterpart at the end of Paradiso 12, where St. Bonaventure mentions 12 others, among whom are the grammarians, Donatus, the prophet Nathan, Rabanus, Hugh of St. Victor, Anselm, Joachim of Flora, Chrysostom, Peter Comestor, and Peter of Spain. Dante's effort, then, in the Heaven of the Sun, is to show the unity of intellect and will. The synthesis is made manifest by other details. If on earth, Joachim of Flora's theories on the Trinity were found heretical by Bonaventure, now he's praised by Bonaventure as a prophetic spirit. If Aquinas and Sige fought over the question of the unity of the possible intellect, now they join hands, just as the antagonism between Dominicans and Franciscans are now healed. This harmonization of opposite doctrinal positions, by which the boundaries between heresy and orthodoxy are blurred, points to the model of epistemological order operative in Dante. In the Middle Ages, there are, besides the Bible, which is literally a biblioteca, a library, two formal structures organizing the diverse domains of knowledge into a systematic unity. One is the encyclopedia, such as Isidore of Seville's. The encyclopedia is a symbolic compilation, a selective totality of heterogeneous disciplines. The other modality is the Summa, such as Aquinas, which is a compendium of arguments and counter-arguments meant to define the cosmos as an ordered and intelligible totality. Aquinas' totalizing project, which lies unfinished, covers the intellectual aspects of reality, from metaphysics to the Trinity, the angels, ethics, and politics. Historically, the relationship between these two modalities of representation of knowledge is not without its strains. In a way, they stand for the classical opposition between erudition and speculation. The theologians, such as Thomas Aquinas, who uphold principles of rational knowledge, effectively seek to dismiss the encyclopedist's version of knowledge as if it were an immobile anachronism, a hodgepodge of precision and whim. To the calcified fossils of science available in the encyclopedia, the Summa counters with knowledge as the purity of intellectual speculation. Paradoxically, the encyclopedic mode came to full flower in the late Middle Ages with the likes of Vincent of Beauvais, Bartholomew Anglicus, and Thomas of Cantimpré. Dante, who writes at a time when the practice of compiling encyclopedias is fading, but scholasticism is hegemonic, collapses the opposition between the two modes. The precedent is the Romance of the Rose for this. As Dante puts forth his vision of wisdom, he also lays out, following the scheme proposed by Honorius of Autun, Hugh of St. Victor, or Bonaventure, the ordered, formal outline of the methods of study to arrive at the truth. The whole of the Divine Comedy, in effect, is the account of a journey through exile to the Heavenly Fatherland, which is the model of education envisioned by Honorius of Autun and Bonaventure. Paradiso 10 and 12, specifically, in the mathematical context of relational quantity and mobile magnitude, sketch the circle of knowledge as they bring together jurists and historiographers, grammarians and logicians, encyclopedists and mystics, in the conviction that genuine knowledge is never an act of exclusion, limited computations, and measurements. The quantifiable order of knowledge is a relation which connects and entails all the disciplines of the curriculum in a circular movement, which is embodied by the two wheels of the spirits. How are the heterogeneous, discrete disciplines joined together? Isidore of Seville joins them through the consistent deployment of the grammatical principle of etymology. For Dante, as for Jean de Meun, for instance, what animates the totality of knowledge into an ordered whole and rescues it from its being a mere repository of dated entries arranged through the fiction of alphabetical order is the power of metaphor and of poetry to discover resemblances underneath the ostensibly unrelated disciplines. Paradiso 12 faces specifically the question of order and its constitutive elements. Here, the Franciscan Bonaventure tells the life of St. Dominic, the preacher and founder of the believer in the primacy of the intellect in moral choices. Dominic embodies for Dante the conjunction of faith and knowledge, and this conjunction is dramatized by his mystical marriage to faith. The union and marriage to faith makes Dominic the champion of doctrinal orthodoxy. He's called the great doctor in the midst of the heretics, who are those who choose to interpret faith according to their own subjective perspectives. The language which describes Dominic in Canto 12 as the husbandman whom Christ chose to help him in his garden prepares the account for his preaching to the heretics. His force, we are told, strikes on the heretical stocks. Order, then, it seems, is not a total harmony of viewpoints, but it's gained rather at the cost of exclusion of those who question order. To be sure, Dante's idea of the heretics, who represent transgressions, who transgress, sinners who transgress canonical norms by privileging subjective choices, is fairly complex. The heretics, who are the Epicureans of Inferno 10, are philosophical libertines and despotic warmongers. Inferno 10, which is symmetrically related to the Paradiso 10, obviously, is the canto of civil war and of Frederick II. And the heretics are traditionally linked to the atomists, such as Democritus, who were condemned for cutting the world to size. The heretics simplify the world of choice. In fact, they abolish choice, ironically enough, in the sense that they uphold the hegemony of undifferentiated pleasure as the aim of life. In Paradiso 12, order is understood not as acceptance of the divisive subjectivism of heresy or diversified plurality, but as mutuality of consent, of which marriage is the metaphoric embodiment. At any rate, the order Dominic establishes is represented in terms of grammar. The canto, in fact, Canto 12, is punctuated by the presence of what is called a figura etymologica, an etymological figure. Dominic's name is taken to mean that he's possessed by the Lord, and that's what Dante says, and that he might in very construing be what he was, a spirit from up here went forth to name him by the possessive of him whose he wholly was. Dominic, he was named, Dominus, from the Lord. The father, Felice, we are told was veramente felice, and the mother was truly Giovanna, if the word, I'm translating Dante, being interpreted, means as is said. The adoption of this grammatical category in the planet of arithmetic is not without interest. Grammar, or the prescriptive science of correct articulation, of proper sequence and arrangement of words, appears as the contrivance controlling the possible drift of language. In the present conceptualization of knowledge, the hegemony of grammar shows that language possesses its own harmony. The word sequence of a sentence implies mutuality, just as there is in Dante a mutuality between the order of reality and the order of language. In this sense, grammatical structure implies order and harmony achieved by the use of etymologies, whose function is to establish a transparent link, a bond between words and things. The assumption of a substantial kinship between words and things also emerges in the principle of nomination in Cantos 10 and 12 of Paradise. Names always carry with them the notion of the proper, unequivocal designation. More than that, the proper name of a thinker is the point at which the contingency and history of the self and the necessity of thought converge. Names reveal, in a sense, the contingency of thought. The grammatical order, then, is all-encompassing. It establishes nominal identities and differences for the tabulation of knowledge. It extends into language the universal, abstract order of arithmetic. It provides, more importantly, the ground for casting Dominic's own prophetic language on the unity of words as the unity of words and reality. The mingling of grammar and theology in Paradiso 10 forces us to think that order is reducible to a question of linguistic propositions, of language, just a question, a simple way of saying things. To be sure, theologians have long reflected on what grammar can contribute to our knowledge of reality. Boethius, for instance, complains about the lack of words in Latin theological speculation, while Anselm ponders where words for God can never be used in a proper sense, or where they are unavoidably transgressive. Alan of Lille remarks that the language of the Bible cannot be measured in the light of the rules codified by the grammar that we use in everyday language. The Word of God, he says, cannot be subjected to the laws of grammar, a phrase that has become, because of its emblematic quality, a recurrent perspective throughout the Middle Ages. In the incarnation of Christ and the seven liberal arts, however, Alain de Lille focuses on the breakdown of both grammar and logic to account for the wondrous paradox of the incarnation. The event of the incarnation shatters the possibility of logical and grammatical order. For Christ, the Word and the conjunction and the copula is outside of all rules. In God, there is a beginning without a beginning, an end without an end. The Virgin is a mother. God becomes man. Confronted with this third event, grammar, which deals with the rules of passivity and activity, cannot explain how in the incarnation, action begets passion. Arithmetic finds unity turning to something other than itself. Logic discovers its fallacies. In short, to translate a very well-known poem of the Middle Ages from the Latin, in the copula of the verb, every rule is confounded. Nature is silent. The force of logic is banished. Rhetoric's judgment is destroyed. Reason wavers. This sequence of theological paradoxes is fully dramatized in Paradiso 33, where we are shown how the pattern of theological order is a transgression of the order of the sciences, where the Virgin is a mother and a daughter of her own son, and the circle of the geometers cannot be squared. This means that discourse of theology is itself a supreme transgression of the rules of grammar, such as they are exemplified by, for instance, Alain de Lille. In Paradiso 1, Dante refers to his own transgression as a poet in confronting the divinity. The transgression, as I stated at the beginning of the paper, climaxes in his visionary claim in Paradiso 33 that he sees the divinity face to face. In a way, he's more like Ovid's Actaeon than the prophets who cover their faces in the contact with the holy. Dante's own reference to the Ovidian myth of Marsyas and my reference now to Actaeon stand for the Ovidian and Dantesque understanding of poetry as simultaneously order and transgression. It is order in the measure in which it is controlled by unavoidable rules of grammar. But it is a transgression in the measure in which it is and wills to be a form of audacious thought. The unavoidably dangerous path poets take in pushing the frontiers of vision beyond the terms of common day, into the imaginative space beyond the sun, where Ulysses, Icarus, Elijah, Jason, and Dante dare us. I began this paper suggesting to you an option between transgression and order. Is transgression to be subsumed into a paradigm of order, or is order subverted by transgression? I have ended by stating that order and transgression are not antagonistic terms, that each ceaselessly entails the other in Dante's visionary poetry. I will conclude by referring very briefly to the ethical resonance that the scheme of mutuality between order and transgression has in the Divine Comedy. As is known, the system of punishment in hell depends on categories drawn from Aristotle's Ethics, on the acknowledgement of nature and natural justice as the regulative principle of conduct. The symmetrical balance of vices and virtues in purgatory, on the other hand, reflects the dependence of social bonds and values on the doctrine of love, which is not libertine or Epicurean, since this type of love a priori excludes freedom and the order of the polity, but it's one of mutuality. This ethical core has a universal dimension and is also applicable to life on earth. But the moral extension of the idea of musical harmony, the moral extension would be justice, peace, musical harmony, is available appropriately enough from the heaven of Mars